I wasn't being much help. I described what I was wearing so he would recognise me. Right, I've got long hair and a beard, said Pete, with not a hint of impatience. Stay there, I'll find you. A couple of minutes later, Pete called back. I think I can see you. What are you standing next to? A row of pillars, I said, looking around me, and an empty newspaper stand. Suddenly there was a tap on my shoulder, and I turned around to face what appeared to be Jesus in a UNICEF t-shirt. I'm Pete, said Pete, closing his phone and extending a hand. I'm Simon, I said. Nice to meet you. Where's Kieran? On the verge by one of the airport car parks. He's waiting with a truck. It's broken down. I allowed myself a wry smile. I have a bad feeling about this, I said. This was going to be an interesting trip. I'm from Glastonbury, explained Pete, which most people don't think exists except for 4 days when the music festival comes to town. We were sitting in the sunshine on a grass verge, just a short walk from the terminal, me and my rucksack and Pete on what appeared to be a large picnic hamper. Kieran was gazing under the bonnet of a truck and talking on his mobile to a mechanic friend. But that's not to say that there's similarities, Pete went on. There's still a big hippie and alternative population in the village of Glastonbury, and it's always been very independent-minded. A couple of years back, McDonald's opened up a restaurant there. It only lasted a short while before it was burned down. It took the police until 2 weeks afterwards to establish it was arson. Ironic, really. Why? I asked. Because everyone else in the village knew it was arson 2 weeks beforehand. I laughed. The mention of McDonald's reminded me of the fact that due to my rush to leave the flat that morning and my flight being low cost and food-free, I'd not eaten anything at all. As if by feat of corporate magic, I noticed a McDonald's just along the road from us. I'm hungry, I said. There, what did I tell you? Exclaimed Kieran cheerily as he hung up on the phone and came to join us. What did I say on our way to the airport, Pete? That Simon always needs food, he replied in his Somerset drawl, turning to me with a grin. And if we want to stop you being in a bad mood on a trip, we've got to keep you stocked up. This was true. The fact I was relatively slim in build didn't stop me having a huge appetite, and especially when I was on the move, my needs in life were simple. Plenty sleep and plenty food. I was 25 and could still get away with eating more or less what I wanted with only the barest minimum of exercise. Well, I'm off to McDonald's, I said. Anyone want anything? No thanks, said Pete, unsurprisingly. But if I had some quick drying cement, I'd come with you to visit the bathroom. So that introduces you to Pete, and I think that's the best thing about travel, is meeting really unusual people like that, and we got on terrifically well with Pete, and you can read a few more of his stories from his later travels in the book, which I briefly mentioned. I wrote to Pete and told him that the book was coming out, and said, right, I'll buy it as long as I'm in it. So, my next visit after Albania, and you can read all about Albania in the book, was Ireland. And I went to my second mullet, which was Bell Mullet on the Mullet Peninsula in County Mayo, on the west of Ireland. I'd discovered it in a poem quite randomly. But I got there and discovered that actually Bell Mullet wasn't really that much. It was a bit of a drab place, a little bit brief, not much happening, but I did arrive in the middle of Holy Week, so everything was shut down. So silly move on my part, really, but that's the joy of travel. You get to learn and understand strange and new and different cultures. Anyway, so one of the other amazing people, like Pete, was a big part of the story, but you don't have to be a big person in someone's life to make a huge impression on them. And here's someone who made just the fleeting, most passing presence in my life, and he made a real impact on me. There was only one bus out of the village, Mullet, the next morning, Saturday, and I needed to catch it. I had one more night left in Ireland, and my plan was to spend it in Derry, Northern Ireland's second city, before heading to catch the ferry from Belfast on Sunday morning. My bus was to Ballina, from where I would catch another bus to Sligo and change there for Derry. I arrived early at Mullet's one bus stop. Not only was I keen to ensure that I was in time for my bus, I was also pretty keen to get out of town. The woman in the B&B had typified my experience of Mullet. She'd served an admittedly fantastic breakfast, which would keep me stocked up for most of the day. It can happen. But she barely spoke to me, asked nothing about the reason for my visit, and said nothing like welcome to Mullet, and it generally made me feel like something of an inconvenience. And that's what I'd felt about the place as a whole. No one else had really spoken to me, and while admittedly I'd not exactly made an effort to stop strangers on the street to engage them in conversation, I'd still not experienced the supposedly traditional Irish welcome. Not that I really blamed Mullet, it wasn't really a bustling tourist destination. Why should I have been treated any differently? It had been my choice, after all, to come to a small rural village in the middle of the Easter weekend. My thoughts were distracted by the arrival of the bus. I was the only person waiting. Ballina? Asked the bus driver, a portly gentleman with a small moustache, a round face, and a cheerful smile. I replied in the affirmative. Fling your bag underneath. I'm not doing the accent here. Fling your bag underneath, he said breezily, opening the boot, and hop on. I sat on the front row of the bus, just behind and to the left of the driver. As I was the only passenger, he started to engage me in conversation as we waited. So you're just visiting then? Yes, I'm from Ireland. No, not. Yes, I'm from Inverness in Scotland, just on a week's holiday around Ireland. What on earth brings you to Mullet then? I'm visiting every place in the world that's got the word mullet in its name, I replied matter-of-factly. The bus driver's face lit up with a mixture of fascination and disbelief, and he burst out laughing. Big hearty belly laugh. No way, really? Yep, I replied, not really sure what else to add. Every place in the world with mullet. Good grief. Seriously, why? Where have you been? I began telling him a little more about my trip to Albania, how I'd found reference to Mullet in an old teacher's book of poetry, and about the other mullets I was hoping to visit. He laughed. I told him how it had all started with the travels around Eastern Europe with Neil. He laughed again, listened to my story intently, punctuating it with an occasional, no way, or you never did, or that's fantastic. Well, I think that's a brilliant idea. I really do, he declared when I'd finished. It's a grand that you came out here. Good luck with the rest of the journey. Our conversation dried up as an elderly woman got on just as we were about to leave. But he left me with a big smile on my face, and I sat back and took in the bleak County Mayo countryside. The first person in Mullet to show any interest in the trip, the one person to appreciate it just for what it was, a madcap, pointless adventure, was the bus driver on the way out of town. His laughter and his endorsement of my admittedly eccentric efforts made me feel it hadn't been wasted after all. I wasn't doing this for any higher purpose. I wasn't even doing it to find out more about the haircut, to be honest. I was just doing it because I could and because it was fun, and he loved the idea. My mood brightened, and I began feeling a lot more content with myself for having attempted the mission and made it out to the remote west coast of Ireland, all thanks to the bus driver. Skipping on a little bit, many months later, I quite randomly met an Irish girl in a pub. We got talking, and she said she was from County Mayo. Right, I was in Mayo a while back on holiday, I said. What part? Mullet, so I live in I live in Galway now. It really was a small world, I thought. No way, I visited there. I spent 2 nights in Mullet. Seriously? Some surprise. I could only ask, why? I told her. She called me in that case. She liked the idea. What did everyone there make of it? She said everyone, as if there'd been a great civic reception to greet me. Perhaps crowds lining the street to welcome me to my second mullet. I smiled wryly at the thought and explained to her that the only person to show any real enthusiasm or appreciation for the mission had been the bus driver on the way out of town. Describe him, I might know him. I told her as much as I could remember about the driver, his appearance, mannerisms, accent. Paddy Soft Arse! Paddy Soft Arse! Yeah, that's what we used to call him. He did the school run, lovely bloke, called Paddy, but he always put a cushion on the driver's seat instead of sitting directly on it. So we call him Paddy Soft Arse. I laughed. Such a typically Irish nickname. Well, the one inhabitant of Mullet who actually appreciated my mission was now no longer anonymous, but he cheered me up no end after a couple of drab days in the Mullet. So here's to you, Paddy Soft Arse. And yeah, I would never have imagined having been there to be standing here in such a beautiful location.